Hello, this is Stephen Sprague, and welcome to Crypto Grill. I am CEO of Rivetz Corp.
Okay, everyone, let's crypto and grill. It's Crypto Dantes here again. It's been a while since we last spoke to you, but I am joined yet again by my able compatriot, Mr. Stig of the Pump. Stig, how are you?
How do people know that it's been a while?
It's very good.
We
Time
We
stops
recorded
to...
these back to back.
Yeah, you raised some very deep questions about time, and let's not get into that. Let's save the physics and time conversations for another day. But how are you?
I'm good to
well?
answer your question. I'm good.
And for those of you that don't know, Stig is actually getting married very soon, so he's fully in the middle of Wedmin.
Thanks for calling that out, mate.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime. But we are excited to be here. So let's just recap on some of the things that we've done over the last few months and the journey we've taken you on. So we started on Bitcoin, Ethereum, the crypto space. What is a distributed ledger? What is cryptocurrency? And we've gone all the way through the basics and had some really strong conversations with people about the value of Bitcoin and the value of the crypto space. What we said at the beginning of the series that we wanted to do was explore more about the companies involved and the innovations that are coming out, the decentralized business models, the technology and the innovations that are helping to move the space forward. So really glad to have a guest today who is going to help us understand a bit more in depth about the security space, which will hopefully add on to the other session that we've had regarding security right at the beginning. So without further ado, Stephen Sprague, say hello.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you said you're in a parking garage in New York right now.
Exactly. This is crypto. It happens from everywhere.
It's a tough bear market, isn't it? It's been really hard on everyone.
I've
That's right.
moved back in with
Moving
my
from fancy conference rooms to parking garages, but it's quiet, which is the challenge in New York, is to find a quiet spot.
Excellent. Well, as long as you're not just selling all the office furniture in that TV show, Garage Wars or something like that, then and you're still going, then that's fine. But look, thank you for joining us. It'd be really good to hear a bit more about yourself and the company that you're Rivetz that you're leading at the moment, and your role there, and we'll go from there. We've got quite a stacked agenda and set of questions for you. So, yeah, intro to yourself and Rivetz would be fantastic to kick us off.
Yeah, so I come from over 20 years in the trusted computing space, and trusted computing is how we've built hardware into devices to protect keys and transactions. My original portion of my career was focused on the PC space, and I started Rivetz in 2013 to focus on the emerging capabilities in mobile. So Rivetz builds software that enables the embedded hardware that's already in your phone. So today there are over 1.5 billion Android phones that could support a hardware blockchain wallet or crypto wallet for all different purposes, with the security actually protected by the chipsets of your handset. These are the same technologies that protect Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, what Samsung's done with their Knox strategy. And so it provides a very strong isolated execution and protection of keys within your device. And so Rivetz is focused on enabling that, enabling third-party applications to have access to it, and also building some of the core applications around a wallet, two-factor authentication, messaging, that we think are some of the basic services that people will want to use and explore.
Okay, excellent. And I love the fact that you're talking about all of this as we can hear a car crash unfolding behind us. So as long as as long as you don't get hit
No,
by
I'm
some
good.
kind of reversing lorry, then that's great. But so one of the things that we haven't really gone into in detail is let's just sort of, if we just wind it back, 2FA, blockchain security, all these different things. They may be slightly confusing to some of the listeners. Not everybody will be up to the same standard and level of understanding of technology and security as others. So if you could help us just understand the more of the basics. What is two-factor authentication? Why is it important?
Sure.
And why should people care about it?
Maybe we can start at the very foundation. We all shop every day. And so today, we all know that we've been going from magnetic stripe cards to chip cards over the last 10 years. And the difference there is software security versus hardware security. A magnetic stripe card can be copied. And when it's copied, people can go to a gas station, buy gas with your card, etc. Now that they've given us a chip card, the keys in the chip card are in tamper-resistant hardware, and so the keys can't be stolen. There's actually a cryptographic challenge response that takes place with the key in your chip card. But then we also know that if we go and shop on the high street, we put the card into a device, it displays the amount we're going to be charged. And so we see what we're going to sign. And then if you're not an American, because we use chip and signature and no one checks the signature, typically you have chip and PIN and you type in your PIN number and that collects user consent. And so when you do a transaction in e-commerce, we'd like all of those same pieces. Keys protected in hardware. What you see is what you sign, so you get proper understanding of the transaction being done and proper collection of user consent. That's been missing in e-commerce for 30 years. With blockchain, we don't have the luxury of continuous monitoring and voyeurism as a mechanism to protect us, which is how Visa and MasterCard and others have been doing it now for a number of years. And so we have to move to a model where the consumer is going to be responsible for the protection of their keys and their transactions. And that's just going to become part of what blockchain really is.
Okay, so we're kind of it sounds like what you're saying is we're not living in a nanny state, but effectively we are giving our trust to those third-party companies, the likes of Visa, MasterCard, Amex, others, that security. And it sounds like that's coming back to the user now. How does that then affect the consumer in terms of are they aware of that? Are consumers even willing to take the risk of that? Because many people just want to know that their money is where it is. They can spend it on a card, and if something goes wrong or it's stolen, then they can get it back, and there's recourse there. Do you think that's a barrier and a hurdle for the industry that we need to get through?
Yes, for commerce, for sure. But what we're also learning is that the world has given us hundreds of keys, right? They're giving us keys to log on to Facebook and keys to log on to Slack and keys to log on to Telegram, and now keys for our hotel rooms and keys for our cars. And so we are going to have to become more capable of protecting all the services that we have relationships to. And so we think blockchain is a catalyst that's going to help us in as consumers in learning how to manage this new model where my device participates in the protection of all the services I belong to.
Yeah, so we've often said that if you don't own your keys, you don't own your coins when relating to crypto and blockchain previously. I guess the question that I've got is, for so many people, handing back that level of responsibility is actually going to be so massive. And with all the interfaces in this space being relatively complex, how are we actually going to create a proposition that the majority of consumers can utilize?
Well, I think it's something we all have to do. This is going to be the huge transition in the marketplace of a shift from a world where we log into a network and the network delivers us all the services to a world where we're the consumers in the center and is connected to a very broad array of services. Now, we've done it really well in the form of things like carriers, where you go get your mobile phone, we register a SIM chip in your phone to the carrier, and your phone just works every day, right? It's fantastic. You just dial the phone number and push send, and all the authentication is invisible and magic. The same is true for your cable box, where you log into your cable box if you have parental access control turned on. Most people don't even log into it. And you can just change channels, and it knows whether you've paid for the channel or not. And so leveraging the device to simplify this model, what consumers fundamentally know is that if I take your device, you notice. However, if I were to steal your passwords, you don't know. And so by binding it to something that's physical, we give the consumer an incredible advantage, which is the ability to notice if their device went missing and then take an action.
It's interesting. It's an interesting thought, because I guess my challenge is how many people are actually going to want to take on that ownership of this themselves. I know people should, and everyone should.
This is what two-factor authentication is. Two-factor authentication is the registration of a device to an account. And your job is to notice if your account goes missing, right? In this case, your device. That's what we're doing, is we're borrowing the only security we have, which has been our mobile phone. And it's not that the Android software is secure. We're borrowing the fact that it has an identity in it from your carrier that is quite secure. Of course, then we learned that people figured out that they can go call customer service and move your phone.
Okay. So if we think about the current user experience then for two-factor authentication. So I said at the beginning, maybe not everyone's as au fait with this. I know when I use it, it's typically to log into an exchange, or unlock your wallet, something like that. You type in some user credentials typically, and then you're prompted with what's called a two-factor authentication, which can be delivered by a number of different entities. I think the most popular one that people are aware of at the moment is Google Authenticator. And that's the one that I've got, and you go into that, and effectively it's a 60-second expiring code that you tap on it and it copies it, and then you go back to the app that you are trying to access and paste that code in, that 6-digit code, and then it opens. And it does that because at some point in the past, you've previously gone into your settings on that website, paired the Authenticator app on your phone to that site, and created some kind of link there. It's quite a clunky experience. I think, like you were saying there, it's you're going back from one app to another. It's not seamless, and there's lots of different codes. And also, I think one of the things that we wanted to pick up later is what happens if you lose the codes or your phone. How do you recover all of that stuff? So,
right.
With this user experience that we've got at the minute that's a bit clunky, it's probably akin to the 90s internet experience. What's the future going to look like, and how does perhaps Rivetz have a solution for that?
So today we participate in replacing your Google Authenticator with one where the keys, instead of being held in the software of the operating system where they can be stolen, we move those keys into the tamper-resistant hardware of your device, where they're enormously more resistant to being copied. Now, what's interesting is, what do we really want? So if I asked you, would you buy a new phone where every time you dial the phone number, you wait for a second factor code, type in your second factor code, and it completes the phone call? You would say, oh my God, no, I would never use such a phone. But that's how we use the internet. You see, with a phone, we embedded the security into the service many, many years ago, back in the 1990s. And so today, you just dial the phone number and push send. The keys that were that registration process initially are held in the SIM chip in your phone in hardware. And so the security is built in, and therefore the security is invisible. And because the security is strong, it also increases the value of the relationship with the user and potentially the value of the services delivered. And so what's the future? The future is you want security built into the applications. So we want keys in everything. And so the challenge has always been, how are we going to manage all those keys? Because we certainly can build billions of devices that hold keys. And along came blockchain, and I think provides the framework for how all global services will manage their relationship with the subscriber and manage all their keys, including the individual user.
Interesting. So I think this is a really good segue for you to potentially talk us through then how the Rivetz solution is constructed and sort of how you came about that as a solution and sort of what your first initial steps were to launching it.
Yeah. So our first goal was to sort of demystify the technology. And so what we've done is we've built a developer set of tools that any Android app developer can include to have strong authentication embedded in their app. Think of it as an industrial strength remember me button. So once I click remember me, it actually binds the hardware of my device to that service.
Okay.
And so now only that device can connect. And in addition, what we've done is we've created a token. So we participated in the whole ICO process, et cetera. But the purpose of our token is to give your device a store of value that would allow the device to pay for individual services on a microtransaction basis. Kind of like and think of it a little bit differently than you're used to. Think of it as automatic money. You want a device where you can give it just a few dollars, $5 or $10 in value, so that when it wants to spend 2 cents, it can just automatically spend it because the owner has basically said on these services you're allowed to spend money. And that way that automated money becomes a much easier mechanism for moving forward because you don't have to ask the customer every time, do you want to spend a penny, Dad? Do you want to spend a penny? Can I have another penny? Yeah. Right? Think of it as an allowance for your device.
So there's two sort of questions I've got from there then. So I think the automated point is interesting, but also let's say, aren't you almost going against the whole point of 2FA by doing this? Because if someone steals your device, takes your phone, and it's all automated and synced into the device, and you've lost that device, isn't that user then exposed to whoever has the device effectively taking ownership of the keys and being able to spend carelessly and do whatever they want with that device? Certainly. Because it's already approved?
Certainly. And so the most important thing is that consumers become almost instantly aware that they've lost a device. And so what we provide is a mechanism to lock the keys that is very simple to operate, can be as simple as calling your carrier and say, lock my phone, or even SMSing something and locking your phone. But you're not deleting the keys at that point because the keys are held in tamper-resistant hardware. And so if you discover that you left your phone in the couch as opposed to actually losing it, you can be quite promiscuous with the lock function. You won't be as promiscuous with a wipe function, right? Because wiping is annoying. Like you're like, oh, I left my phone on the couch and I just wiped it. That's a pain, right? Now I got to spend all Saturday afternoon rebuilding my phone. And so we think backup and recovery, and recovery, of course, becomes the socially engineered component of this puzzle. If you make it easy to lock, then I just have to figure out how to socially engineer recovery. And so we believe recovery is that your collection of devices is your identity, not your single superphone. So supporting your PC, your phone, your tablet, your television, your mother's phone as part of the recovery mechanism, we think provides a very effective model. So maybe it requires 2 or 3 of your devices to confirm, and then you can recover your handset and carry on.
So what then is the recovery process if you do lose a phone, and how do you stop against inadvertently someone getting into your phone and getting access to all of that?
So there's sort of two ways to think of the challenge. The first challenge is, what happens if someone just picks up my phone? What protects me from having my keys being used or my services being consumed? And that protection is the same as we have today. Unlocking your phone with a PIN or a biometric, and you can clearly bind into specific services that if you're doing a higher dollar value transaction, that you might require a PIN or a biometric unlock as well. So maybe checking the balance in your bank account requires no additional authentication than unlock your phone. But sending $100 to somebody, you might decide requires a PIN number or a biometric to confirm. Then you have the second problem, which is I physically lost my phone. And so there are 2 steps there. One is, can I lock it, which is a relatively straightforward operation. And we'll provide a variety of different mechanisms. I don't think there's any one clean answer. There should be automated ways, like Today we have the idea of policies with keys, which says that certain keys can only be used if, for example, I'm at my house. And so we can geo-fence those keys. And so if my phone is stolen somewhere else, they'd have to physically go to my house in order to use my keys. And we think those are great automated mechanisms, as well as you can reach out. And we have a partnership with Telefonica, where we're integrating both the trusted execution in the handset and the SIM, so you can reach out to your carrier and say, turn off my phone. And at that point, it will turn off the keys that are in the handset as well.
Okay.
So there's simple mechanisms to shut it off. And then obviously the third step is I physically lost my phone. I dropped it in the ocean. How do I make I go buy a new phone. How do I recover all the services to which I belong? And so we think backup and recovery is a very, very important piece of this puzzle so that we never lose our keys.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. And I wanted to come on to the Telefonica partnership shortly. So there was a sort of second angle to the question that I had as well, which was relating to what you mentioned about those automated payments. Let's assume that we've fast forwarded a couple of years. We've gone maybe more than that, maybe 5 or 10 years, but we've gone through the onboarding process. Crypto has gone global and mass adoption, and it's a normal part of everyone's lives. And actually, there is an option to unbank yourself, to remove yourself from the current system, and put all of your money and your finances through just the Bitcoin ledger or another cryptocurrency ledger. And from there, you can get your third-party services for microloans, mortgages, car financing, whatever you need. You can get it from some kind of entity. Is there a situation there with Rivetz then that you said you can automate your or ask for approval for certain value transactions? Can you divide those into things like regular transactions where you've got your utility bills going out from your crypto distributed ledger and your rent or your mortgage payments, but then on a day-to-day basis for buying coffee or whatever you need day-to-day, your limit for spend is $30. So can you have a two-tiered system where there's a direct debit going out and then a daily purchases limit?
Yes, but where Rivetz is focused is, let's talk about your internet money. So I'm going to send you an article from the New York Times. You don't have a subscription. Can you spend 2 cents to read it? No. It's too annoying. You're not going to fill out a credit card detail, make an account, become a subscriber just so you can read an article.
Okay.
Right? And so today you ignore it. And so the question is in the future, in the world of created content, is there going to be room for true microtransactions?
Interesting.
Right? And so what's the service model for paying 5 cents for a geolocation test?
Mm-hmm.
Today, you look at your Visa bill and you can't figure out what the subscription is that you paid for. Right? It says $1. Great. And then you have to Google the stupid tagline to figure out whose dollar you're spending to. We need a better model for the internet. What's cool about crypto is when I spend 2 cents, I also bound an identity and a private key to the service. And so when I spend 2 cents a year later, I can prove I'm the same person.
Yeah.
Okay. So this actually touches on a really interesting point, because I know there's a lot of people that believe that the internet itself is run under central authorities, i.e. everyone goes back to the same anchor points within the internet, and that kind of content management, content projection is becoming far more improved, and soon the way that someone described it to me, soon you'll be able to cross the internet at the lowest level of content that you need to. But in order to do that, you're going to need a transaction layer to hop from one thing to the other, and that transaction engine at the moment doesn't exist
because we never did e-commerce.
Yeah,
because we're going to actually have to make it safe. Because if I make it possible for your bot to stop by and ask for money, your Android operating system is going to give it up every single time.
But what is the infrastructure there that's required in order to do that?
We think you need proper protection of a private key and the ability to form transactions and a small amount on deposit. Mm-hmm. And so you want to be actually able to do transactions within your device, locally accumulated. The way Rivetz is constructed is it's almost like the idea of a lightning network, where we give the device value and it checks it in and out of the chain.
So the interesting thing here that that I quite like actually is it's a double-edged sword for me. I think that you said you can, if you create almost that financial transaction passport layer, so that you can interact with an article from the Financial Times, you can download an app or whatever. You can effectively pay for whatever you consume. So you're not overpaying. You're paying for the things that are valuable to you. And I think that's not too dissimilar to the concept that Brave and the basic attention token are trying to implement. And I think there's value there, but also I think you've got that double-edged sword risk of if you don't stay on top of that, you may accidentally end up spending an absolute fortune. You could click on 100 5-cent articles in a day, or even some kind of spam bot that commandeers your profile in some way and just keeps clicking on these things and accruing small low-value transactions that you may have pre-approved, but go through and add on sort of costs and transactions that you wouldn't normally have opted into. So there is a double-edged sword risk, but I do think it's an interesting concept because we're not in that space right now. But yeah, keen to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I think you're absolutely correct, and it's one of the reasons why I think we need as much security as possible in order to make this work, because we haven't had the right tools to assure that the content we're consuming and the transactions being done are real. And so this brings us the sort of functionality of an internet's cable box inside our handset that provides the protected delivery of content and services and payment, and yet does it in a manner that is sufficiently secure to enable those kind of consumable models. You would never want to hook your phone to an automatic payment system and then put $10,000 on it. That would be foolish.
Yep.
The idea that, however, you could give your, we see this going forward is everything is going to need this, right?
Yep.
Your refrigerator is going to want to be able to buy a water filter, and it's going to want to do that automatically. And so we think these are the starting points of what does a transaction decentralized with policy, with proper e-commerce so your keys don't get stolen, look like. And so everything is going to need a wallet. So crypto is one of the most powerful toys that we're ever going to build. It's going to give the internet its mechanism of payment. And we'll balance, but we definitely want automated money in the process.
And and I guess and this is something that we haven't got into. It's one that we were sketching out for a future session that we wanted to try and find somebody to talk to about it. But it's more about the future of the internet and a decentralized internet where trust is taken away from third parties, but because of the ability for blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology to act as that third party, you're still going to need some kind of vibrates in the system so that it doesn't run out of control. And all these things and devices are connected and self-ordering content, products, services without the approval of the end user. Because automation is great on one level, but there needs to be human oversight.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, our devices, it's about shifting to an identity-based model of computing. And what blockchain provides is that centralized management of identity where the customer is in control. The user owns their core root keys because they just made a wallet. And that wallet helps you to manage your collection of devices. And so fundamentally, as we go forward, all your things should just become friends with each other. It's think of it like a Facebook of devices. It's how the consumer will manage their collection of things, their cars, their keys, all their IoT stuff, their different wallets, etc. We need this organization of keys, but the consumer needs the tools to help them to manage this new customer-centric model, identity-centric model to the network going forward.
Okay, no, that makes sense, and and it's interesting because that infrastructure and those keys, those services, and those systems just aren't there yet. They're emerging, they're nascent, and there's some test beds out there, but they're not really they've not been deployed en masse yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of years pan out in that space. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, which is slightly related to that, is your recent partnerships. So actually, let's just wind before we do that. Let's wind the clock back. So last year you ran an ICO for Rivetz. You had your fundraising, and it's been a tough year regarding crypto and the investment and all of the capital available in there. How has that affected Rivetz as a company and your roadmap and development? Because nice segue from there. I wanted to get into the Telefonica partnership. So yeah, what's the last year of your journey been like?
Sure. So it's been an interesting process. Like you said, we completed an ICO back in the summer of 2017. We were one of the very early ones. We successfully funded, our project from a pre-sales perspective. So there are today thousands of people who hold Rivetz tokens. And those tokens today can be used to sign up and become a service provider. And very soon they'll be used to fund devices that are deployed in the network. And as part of that, we were able to build a relationship with Telefonica over the last year. They're the fourth largest carrier in the world. And what we've been doing is a joint development project to do the first dual root of trust devices. And so we'll show them in a few weeks at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. But this is where we're splitting your private key between the trusted execution environment, the chips in your actual manufactured device, and then also providing protection of the private key with the SIM module in your handset. And what this provides us is two different supply chains, two different paths to protecting the key, so that if one of the pieces of infrastructure makes a mistake, let's say Samsung loses your keys, you don't actually lose your keys because they're also protected by the carrier infrastructure, and vice versa is true. And what's important in this is it also removes control either from the manufacturer or from the carrier. Again, the owner is in control of their keys. So we think multiple roots of trust, or think of it like running a Trezor and a ledger together to protect your key. You're not relying on any one infrastructure, you're actually relying on both. And so we're excited to go down that path. We're looking to ultimately offer this technology to their 350 million subscribers on their network. We think this is how mass market hardware crypto gets built into every phone. In the end, mobile devices operate chains. We have to have a hardware wallet at the end point of everything. Whether it's your phone, your refrigerator, your car, everything's going to need a hardware wallet.
So you're integrating directly with the carrier rather than just having a standalone app that consumers could download?
No, it'll be a standalone app that the consumer downloads.
Okay.
It will be basically invisible. What we do is, at first, we use the trusted execution in your phone. So you download an app, like a normal wallet app, except then behind the scenes, there's a second app that's downloaded into the chipset of your phone, which provides the protection of the private key in the hardware of your handset, in what's called a secure enclave or a trusted execution environment. And because there is always the risk if you have a single manufacturer building that, what we've done is we've added a second layer of protection by writing an app that runs in the SIM chip. The carrier pushes that out across their network to all of their SIMs. That's the little chip that you plug in your phone. It's your subscriber module. And that SIM chip then also encrypts your private key. And so now you have two separate devices, two separate supply chains, assuring that if you lose your phone, you're never going to lose your keys.
Okay. Excellent. And I read another article recently that you've also done or embarked on a partnership with WANchain. WANchain was one of the biggest and most hyped sort of projects of 2018 or end of 2017, 2018. How does that fit into the ecosystem? So it's a great partnership for us. What you want to do is build the security directly into the apps. So at the end of the day, somebody builds a really cool distributed app, whatever it happens to do, from playing video games to productivity to moving money around, right?
You don't have to get your Trezor out to operate your DApp, right? You just want it to work on your phone like normal things work on your phone. And so what we're doing is providing a full hardware wallet capability that WAN chain is incorporating into their wallet infrastructure. So now any of the WAN chain dApps can just have a wallet built into their application. We think that's really the model going forward, is your mobile phone is what you use to operate all these services. Mobile operates chains. And so ultimately, whether it's a distributed exchange or what WAN chain is doing in their models, what EOS is doing, ultimately we expect to support those protocols within the Rivetz hardware capability in the handsets. And this is something that can be provisioned over the air. So today, 1.5 billion Android handsets have been enabled with the capability that we use to support deploying the hardware security, really the software to turn on the hardware security that's in your device.
Yeah.
So the market's big enough and interesting enough to start to play, and we'll see. Ultimately, you want the security just built in.
Yeah. Yeah, plug and play, I think, is one of the biggest advantages. If we can crack that and improve the UX over the next couple of years, I think that will help with adoption. Speaking of adoption,
so we have an example. We have an example of that. In 1998, Microsoft decided to put multimedia as a standard capability in new computers. Okay, and what stopped was a multimedia industry where you had to get your screwdriver out and put a sound card in the computer. And so we went from a world where only geeks should apply, but you could make audio play on your computer, to one where grandma all of a sudden has a laptop that plays MP3 files. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? And the rest is history. Blockchain needs to be built in. Blockchain is closer to multimedia and its deployment architecture than it is to just purely internet, because internet didn't really require ever any hardware.
Do you think
blockchain does?
Do you think that we will see distributed ledger technology embedded and built into existing companies and see them challenge some of the existing companies, or do you think we will see new companies emerge that will challenge the incumbent providers?
I think we're going to build it into everything. I think it's going to touch all sectors.
Okay.
The models here are very powerful. We have not had e-commerce yet. There is no subscriber yet on the internet. These are the technologies to enable the subscriber: identity, payment, non-repudiation of data, the ability for the consumer to have their own big data and not just everybody else. These are the foundations of how we build the subscriber-based web, so that we can connect those who create to those who consume and create an economic model that's just not voyeurism as the only mechanism.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's going to be a fascinating journey to see how it all pans out. On that note, we are roughly out of time. There's three final questions I had for you. What does the next 6 to 12 months have in store for yourself and for Rivetz as a company?
It's all about deployment for us. We just shipped our two-factor authentication. Anybody who has an Exchange account and an Android phone that supports Rivetz should play with it and use it to replace their Google Authenticator. It's a safer and more secure mechanism than Authenticator. And so it's really all about putting technology in people's hands and demonstrating use.
And you seem to know quite a lot about the blockchain distributed ledger space. Stephen, this is something that we ask to all of our guests. Are you Satoshi Nakamoto?
No.
Okay. And you wouldn't tell us even if you were.
But I was doing microtransactions and digital cash in the mid 1990s. So there are a few old classic crusty characters that were playing around in this space, and so it's great fun to see the advancements that have been made.
Excellent. And final question, it wouldn't be Crypto and Grill podcast without asking, Stephen, if we were to hold the World Crypto Conference or Blockchain Global Summit at your house, and we all descended upon you with our cartoon avatars and all kinds of Lamborghinis, what would you put on the grill or the barbecue to keep everybody fed and less salty than they are on crypto Twitter?
Oh, that's super easy. So first off, you have to cook a nice 2.5 inch thick porterhouse steak, because that's nicely impressive, and more than happy to make dinner for over 100 people. Sit down, not a problem. I'm happy to cook.
Excellent. Well, I think there's less than 100 people on crypto Twitter now. I think everybody's been absolutely destroyed over the last year. So I think it's just me and my
Oh,
5
no,
alternative accounts. But
absolutely, bring them on.
fantastic. Well, look, Stephen, this has been a really fantastic conversation. Is there anything that, any points of view or anything that you want to add before we close today?
No, thank you everybody for your time, and I would just say that we fully believe in the future of a token-based, especially utility token-based model, where the internet has money and identity that's built in, and it's all about putting the consumer at the center of the picture. The consumer, after all, the owner of the private key, is what operates all blockchains.
Excellent. Stephen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.